Hello and welcome everybody to this newest episode of the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference specials in the Mind Explorations Facebook group. That's a long title, but we are working our way towards the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference this April on the 5th and 6th in Dublin. So we're doing one or two sessions every week, just introducing, well, some of the speakers. I think I have more than half of the speakers so that you can make a decision. Would I like to go there or would I like to stay home, or would I maybe like to know more about the speakers? So that is giving you a taste of what's going to happen at the conference and, what the speakers are like. So today I have with me, and I'm really, really happy about that, Cormac Colleran from Dublin, who is going to tell us about how to help clients with addictions, cocaine addictions. I did write it a bit different on the thumbnail because Facebook doesn't like certain words and certain, terms that you use. So just overcoming addictions. Cormac. So first tell us about yourself. How long have you been in business and what made you go to, well, addictions, cocaine, etc.?
So, good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Astrid, and thank you, everybody else. So, I started out in hypnotherapy about 12, 13 years ago to become a better coach. I started in coaching about 15 years ago, and prior to that, I used to work in the pharmaceutical and medical device industries. So I came from a corporate culture out into working for myself. I decided to train as a coach, and um, what I noticed was, when I was coaching people, so coaching 101, you set some smart goals, you identify obstacles that might get in the person's way. We ask questions about what resources we need to get beyond those problems. Um, a great question, what else do we need? And so we'd set a nice like a timeline approach and milestones and goals. And what I began to notice was no matter how great we created this, you're still finding an inertia in a lot of clients.
Mhm.
And so that led me to think, what else is happening? So why isn't someone doing this? They've agreed that we've helped them to come up with something that they feel is going to get them to move forward. It's a clear path, but something was stopping them. So that obviously led, as all of you wonderful people will understand, to something to do with the unconscious mind. And so I went initially, I studied NLP before studying hypnotherapy. And there was an NLP part of the my coaching as well, and I had learned a little bit about it, then went back into it. And in order to become better for my clients, then I started learning hypnotherapy. And without necessarily starting out to become a hypnotherapist, that's what happened.
Mhm.
And I left a little bit of the coaching behind and I moved further into hypnotherapy. And I've been running the Dublin Hypnosis Clinic here in Dublin for about 12 years now. I used to work for another group before that. Um, I have two clinics in Dublin. I have one that I work in myself in South Dublin, and I have an employee working in North County Dublin for me.
Mhm.
So, I have, why am I working and specializing in working in and training in cocaine addiction? Probably because of the kind of people that I've been working with. And this has been a big thing for me. So I've noticed, especially since COVID, I've noticed a lot of people coming into me that kind of remind me of myself, kind of men, dads in their mid 40s. They're holding down good jobs. They're respected in their communities, and they've got a cocaine addiction, and they hate it, and it's ruining their families, and it's destroying like their relationship, their marriage, their children, and it's really killing them. And I began to notice a lot of I began to kind of feel for these people, and I noticed it more and more that lots of people were coming in to see me, and I was putting different things out in my social medias that I was ready and willing and able to help these people. So a lot of people started coming to me. And oh, well, we got to help a lot of people to get let go of a really, really horrible problem. Um, and so with the more successes that I was having with my clients, or more accurately, that my clients were having, that led me then to feeling more confident in the processes I was developing and evolving and choosing. And um I realized that there wasn't really anyone out there um, doing this specifically, saying I'm working with cocaine addiction, and so the habit, or the epidemic, you might call it, has grown so much in Europe in the past 10 years, and certainly in Ireland in the past 10 years. It wasn't really that big of a thing. When I was growing up, you never really heard of it that much. It just wasn't a thing. Even like 20 years ago, when I was in my mid-20s and I was out and I was partying and doing things like that, it just wasn't something that I ever heard of, or wasn't an available thing.
Mm.
But now it seems that it's in every aspect of society. It's in every pub, every restaurant. It's just there. Um,
How do you explain that? Do you have any idea why that happened?
I would say societal and environmental, probably things like just that. One of the things is big drug dealers
Hmm.
at the top, and they're bringing stuff in. Some of the biggest drug dealers in Europe happen to be from Dublin.
Hmm. Ah,
And
right.
interestingly enough, I'll share a little kind of, maybe a little funny thing with you guys.
This is going on
Um,
YouTube, just so you know.
this is on YouTube. So, so there's a cartel called the Kinahans, and they're one of the biggest cocaine cartels in the world. And these guys grew up in the streets of Dublin. Now, they have exiled themselves initially to Dubai. Now there's an extradition treaty between Ireland and Dubai. So apparently they're in Iran, hiding out. Now, a number of months back in October, the main Sunday newspaper here in Ireland did an exclusive with me, where I spoke to them about my work with cocaine addiction. And so there was a big spread on the paper, and on the Sunday paper. So I was on one half of the paper. I shared the top half of the paper with the Kinahans.
Ooh.
So,
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 so
they were the problem and I was the solution. Um,
superhero versus villain, is it?
yeah, maybe. And unfortunately, the thing is, they're probably keeping me in business by having clients. But anyways, that's maybe not something to joke about. I so why is that? I know Ireland has become a lot more of a wealthier country over the past decade, so there's more disposable income,
Hmm.
and so that might be a part of it as well. I'm
Right.
not seeing it. I'm not seeing too many people come to me that are in their 20s and partying. I do see some for sure if it's
Hmm.
gotten out of hand for them.
Right.
Most of these people in their 30s and 40s, and people even into their 50s.
Right.
And the problem became that when we were all locked down in COVID, and we all remember that, right? And we couldn't go out and we couldn't meet friends and there was no socializing. These people were still getting cocaine, but they were bringing it home. And they were waiting on Saturday night till their children were in bed, and they were putting it on the coffee table and having it there
Yeah.
while they're watching TV. And um, that was that kind of, even the thought of that, like, I felt I needed to help these people.
So what does make somebody get into cocaine, or what do clients get out of it? Maybe structured from the beginning to how it
Mm.
continues, if you can answer that.
So I suppose, like, how did they get into it? You know, nearly nearly a similar way that they get into alcohol,
Hmm.
because it's so prolific now. Nearly a similar way. Of course, alcohol is way more accepted in society, but it's in the same situations in the pubs. It's their friends.
Yeah.
And when they do have it, there is a rush that gives them an inflated sense of ego, an inflated sense of confidence. So it does give them that rush initially when they start taking it. But
Mm.
then it becomes the empty promise. It becomes that thing that they're spending a lot of money on, but they're not getting what they want out of it.
Mm.
It really, it's anticipation that happens now. And I work with them around that. Once that thought comes into someone's head, and maybe a lot of them I work with are weekend users, but can't break out of it. So
Mm.
once that thought goes into their head that they want something, it works its way in. And that itself, guys, that is what I would call hypnosis. That's a negative form of hypnosis. They're in a trance state that now something else has taken over, an emotion has taken over that leads them, even if they say, I'm not going to have any, I'm not going to get any, it leads them to sending the text message or calling the dealer. And my clients tell me it arrives quicker than a Domino's pizza.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
they get it really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And and so once that little moment of weakness to send that text message, then it's in place. And a lot of people, a lot of addicts, it's that kind of anticipation of that. That's the drive, that's the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Then they have it, it gives them a certain dopamine hit as well. But quite quickly then there's that drop off where they need to take the next line, they're controlled by the next line, and it's all disappointment. And
Right.
it's all this false promise.
Yeah.
And so these people are caught in it. And as they're taking it and as they're high on it, they're also feeling the guilt and the shame.
Mm.
Why did I do it again?
Yeah. So, what impact does the cocaine use have on the families or on the environment?
Mm.
What
So
negative impact?
so one of the first things is it's an expensive habit.
Mm.
I've worked with people who have like frittered away their life savings, the rainy day for the children.
Mm.
I've worked with other people that maybe um, that some people can afford the habit. Some people can't, but they still do it. So then
Mm.
it hits in on they're spending money that really the children need for their football boots.
Right.
They're spending the money that the that is needed to fix the car, and then the car doesn't get fixed. All these kind of normal family expenses that things that may not be weekly or monthly, but that always come up, that we know always come up, and their money is gone, so now they're not getting these things, and that brings an awful lot of shame as well for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So, and
so
yeah, go ahead.
it impacts like that. It impacts that. So sometimes I work with men, sometimes I work with women, sometimes I work with couples. So they're taking it, and the couples will decide to take it, but then they end up like bickering and fighting with each other because they're on these inflated sense of ego, and so it's destroying marriages.
Right.
Mm.
And what impact specifically does it have on the kids besides the financial ones?
So picture this: if someone is taken on a Friday night, that means they're going to stay up and they're going to not going to get to sleep till 4 or 5 a.m. And then when they sleep, they're going into a real drop, a real
Mm.
downer. So at 8 a.m., when the children want to get up and go and do things on Saturday morning, there's no one there to get up with them. So the
Okay.
children are watching TV for hours and hours. The dad or the mom are tired, they're grumpy, they're giving out to the children, they're short with them, they've short tempers, they've got no energy to go and live life. So
Right.
you've got children growing up seeing that this is normality. Um, um, and that like your weekends are to be spent in bed. Now the children don't know why it is, but when they get older, they'll know. They'll look back and they'll go, that was it.
Hmm.
They'll figure it out when they're older.
Yeah.
And then, as we know, like everyone here, you've worked with adults that have had childhoods, and those things can carry impact as well.
Yeah.
You know? And if
And
the child feels isolated or alone or rejected,
mm,
that's it impacts self-esteem. Like it really just works into all of these areas. If mum and dad or mum or dad are taking it, it impacts the whole family.
yeah. So you don't get too many women. You said you get mostly men, is that right?
I get mostly men, Astrid. But I do get plenty of women also that need the help.
Hmm.
And I mean, there was one lady I was working with, and she desperately wanted to quit. She was a mum of three. Problem was that her partner was the dealer. He was the dealer in the local area.
Oh,
And
okay.
she had kicked him out of the house, but he'd come back into the house and he'd be cutting it all up and doing all that there. And he'd always give it to her. She wasn't having to pay for it,
Hmm.
which, you know, if she was, it would have caused one problem, but if she wasn't, it also caused another problem.
Yeah.
You
Wow.
know, and this
Uh,
was a lady that honestly, I remember the first time she came to me, it was probably this time of year, it was February or March, and it was a cold day outside. And she came in and she was like this because her nose was damaged so much, breathing in cold air was severely painful for her.
right. Wow. And
Mm.
does it, do women and men have different ways of, well, or different reasons for taking cocaine?
A lot of them fall into it in the same kind of things, like initially social reasons, like socializing.
Hmm.
Um, there are things like so people can take it and they get the experience of it and they take it socializing. And I would say the vast majority of people that have used cocaine in their lives have used it socially and then moved on from it.
Hmm.
Then there are other people that weren't able to move on from it. Now there tends to be then that it's used as an escape, it's used as a coping mechanism for other issues.
Hmm.
So, you
Right.
know, we've all heard the term the issue is never the issue.
Yeah.
And that there's something deeper behind it. Um, when I work with them, I'm not always inclined to go back to resolve things that are behind it. I'm kind of more inclined to work on. So what's presenting here? There's a habit.
Hmm.
There's a reason behind. Anytime there's an unwanted behavior, right? There's something that drives it. There's a motivator of it.
Yeah.
There's something that the subconscious mind thinks it's doing for you, not to you. And so in a lot of these cases, the the intention behind the habit, the intention behind the habit is it's a positive intention. The intention is simply change how the person feels.
Hmm.
The person is feeling in a certain way, change how they feel. So the intention is positive. It's just then that the strategy of using cocaine to change how you feel, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's a poor strategy. Now, when your client understands that, you know, there's a part of this that is okay. It's like the intention. So it kind of means my brain isn't totally effed up.
Yeah.
It gives them that sense. And you can almost see kind of a sense of a little bit of relief in them and a little bit of, okay, you know, my brain isn't like really here trying to hurt me. And so we separate the intention from the strategy, and I tend to use my hands and dissociate and say the strategy, you know, there's you and there's the strategy out here, and the strategy is what we need to change.
Hmm.
And I wasn't going to get into this tonight, but I'll go into it a little bit just to share,
Cool.
because it is, yeah, because it is useful. Um, so. So if we look at intention versus strategy, and we look at like one of the techniques I use is parts.
Hmm.
So there's a part of you that wants to be free from cocaine. There's a part of you that wants to continue taking it. So we ask, what's the intention of both parts? The part that wants to be free is to be free of all of those problems that are associated with it. Ultimately, that comes down to feel better, more
Hmm.
positive feeling than less feeling. The part that wants to take it that also has the positive intention. Just the strategy is wrong, but has a positive intent. And that intent is to change how the person feels.
Hmm.
So the both parts are after the one thing. They just haven't learned to work together yet.
Yeah.
So I will speak to the part that's driving the addiction and driving the behavior. Oh, and by the way, you might want to write this one down. It's just a
Ooh.
little snippet. Um, if it's a weekend user, which the majority of my clients are, if it's a weekend user, we go, oh, so it's just a habit then, not an addiction. It's a really nice little reframe for them
Mm,
because a habit now seems to be a whole lot easier to fix than an addiction.
that's true. Yeah.
So,
So you make it small and then you go into parts. Okay.
yeah. So,
Um,
so we,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So we asked that part of the client that's responsible for the habit. We say to it, okay, it's meeting a need. Can it meet that need in a different way?
Mm,
Can it go back inside and explore, almost like a brainstorming session, explore and discover better ways of meeting these needs?
mhm.
And we give it the space to do that. And I generally then get it to look to meet the need in a different way,
Mhm.
and then um, choose one of the strategies it came up with that it feels is the most appropriate in this situation, and integrate that through the body and mind.
Yeah. Right. So you're not going to tell us the entire protocol, I suppose. That will be giving away way too
I'll
much. But
I'll give you some really useful snippets, I'm
wonderful.
sure.
Okay. So is your or let's go back a bit. When does somebody hit the threshold? What is there a standard point where they all come to you? It's like, no, this is enough. Do they
Mhm.
have to hit rock bottom? Do they have to, have gambled away their house on cocaine? What
Um,
is it?
Not necessarily. I see it at different levels. I really do, and um, a lot of it is a sense of shame.
Mhm.
A lot of it is like, hitting threshold. They're like, I've been they may be telling themselves, well, it's just the weekends that I'm using it, and they allow themselves away with that until then they actually begin to realize um, that their weekend use carries an impact on until Wednesday because
Oh,
they're
wow,
not at
that long.
themselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not at themselves. They're not sharp in their work, sharp in their jobs. I had a guy that works for himself now. He was a daily user, and his habit was costing him something like €300 per day.
That's
So it
a lot
was
of
over
money.
2 grand in a
Yeah.
week. Now,
250 pounds approximately, or 230, something
yeah,
like that per week. Wow.
yeah, very expensive. And now he worked for himself. He created designer products. So I won't say any further what they are, but he was kind of able to afford the habit,
Mhm.
but um he was when money was coming in, and all of you guys working for yourselves will understand this. We got to save money for the taxman at the end of the year, right? He wasn't doing that. He was spending and spending and spending. So then when he had to pay his VAT bill and his tax bill at the end of the year, he had to sell like his Jeep, and he had to sell some important equipment to help him run the business
Oh,
in order to do that.
yeah,
So, so can you see how then that like destroyed his business?
yeah, yeah.
Gone, and he's like his wife had kicked him out of the home, and this guy like he's in devastation because he couldn't see his children, and he dearly loved his children. So threshold comes for people at different levels.
Mm,
Sometimes it hasn't become a really big problem. Sometimes it has. A lot of it is when there's um, disruption in the marriage, that someone else says, I can't handle that you're doing this anymore. And because it's expensive, a lot of it comes through monetary criteria also
mhm.
triggers.
Right. So when somebody comes in for the first time, you'll just give some nuggets. I think I'm thinking to.
Yeah, no, go
Oh,
ahead,
but
Astrid.
yeah, so somebody comes in for the first time, they've hit their threshold. So how do you talk to them? How do you approach the subject?
Hmm. Um, so generally I want to find out what kind of usage it is. That's one of the first things. So how often are you taking it? I want to find out what are the kind of links and associations or triggers, like what are the things that make you do it.
Mm.
I want to find out why you want to quit. And this is going to be very important. You were talking there earlier, Astrid, about future pacing and the importance of that.
Yeah.
And um, so I think the why is one of the big things, understanding their why and helping them understand their why. Because they're not really here to quit cocaine. I mean, they are, but they're making a bigger choice, bigger decision, aren't they? They're
Hmm.
choosing their future. They're choosing their quality of life.
Yeah.
That's what they're choosing. How do I want to be? How do I want to show up in life? That's what they're choosing.
Mm.
And when we can reframe that idea of I'm quitting something, and it's the same with smokers.
Yeah.
If we can reframe that from quitting something which the subconscious mind doesn't necessarily like, and we can move it into I'm going after something and gaining something.
Yeah.
It's a nice reframe for them. So the why is crucially important. And of course, we look at why in terms in two kind of directions. Like, so I will ask, well, what if you continue taking it? Where does that lead you?
Mm.
And our client doesn't need us to tell them. And sometimes therapists fall into this trap of telling them why it's bad for them. They don't need that. If you do that, they'll shut down.
Mm.
So we need to allow them, we need to create a space for them to tell us why why they want to quit.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, so I've worked with like celebrities here that take it, and there's one guy that comes to mind and be quite well known in Ireland, but he's um kind of like one of these Playboy celebrity guys
Hmm.
and a socialite, I think they might call him. And um, when he was telling me about his cocaine use, you could see, like, in his eyes and his expression and his energy, you could see kind of joy. And he's remembering all these mad times that he was
Mm.
having it. And so this will happen. And so then rather than asking them the question, and this actually is another really useful one to write down, rather than asking the question, why do you want to quit? We need to switch it to why not stay using it?
Hmm.
Why bother quitting? Because then that pushes them on the back foot to tell you why.
They have to convince you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like I think it's like the idea, so rating something, like if you're rating a meal or a restaurant and
Mm.
and someone rates you 5 out of 10, you could ask the question, well, why did you not rate me 9 out of 10? What does that make them do? It makes them
Mhm.
focus on all the negatives.
Yeah.
If you ask the question, oh, why did you not rate me 2 out of 10? Then they're going to focus on the positives, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit similar in my mind to that. Is like, so well, why bother quitting at all? And it pushes them back into that space.
Mm.
So when they come in to answer your question and the information we need to find out of them, the why, there are a few little elements around the why and actually getting to their why and helping them get there. We I will specifically say to my clients, I'm not here to convince you to quit. That's
Mm.
not my job. You don't need that from me. You need to come in here convinced that you want to do it. I'm here to help you to do that.
Mm.
So I like to take the pressure off of them that they're not, they will have had so many people say to them why they should quit. They already know that. They don't need us to tell them why, but
Mm.
we need them to tell us. So that's one of the big ones. So there's this when, where, the nature of the usage, there's why do they want to quit. Um, there is explaining that parts to them, that the part of you that's responsible for that habit really has a positive intention.
Mm.
And it really helps you. You notice with your client, it really helps them when you say that to them. I also talk a little bit about, and I'll give you this snippet because at the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference, I'm going to be talking about how I use a protocol, the ICANN Transformational Protocol. So it's ICAAN, and the I is an induction, The C is the corridor of transformation. The A is we do an arm a cataleptic arm. The next A is amnesia, so we're suggesting that the unconscious mind forgets the habit. So when we understand the triggers, we understand when they remember it. This is the same for a smoker as a cocaine user. So finish a meal, they remember to light the cigarette. It's an automatic reminder. So we can hijack that space and put in an automatic forget instead of an automatic reminder.
Right.
And the end then is leading to a new chapter. So in order for me to introduce this to my clients, I want to talk to them about subconscious patterns, and that we can start a pattern, our subconscious mind can start a pattern and forget to turn it off and just run it over and over and over, because as we know, it likes what's familiar to it. Even just to move away from addiction for a moment, look at something like insomnia. So I was speaking to a gentleman yesterday over the phone. He's going to come into me next week, who has insomnia. He told me for 20 years.
Oh.
And I asked him, does he recall things happening back then when it started? And he said, yeah, there was some upheaval in his life. And so what I explained to him was that his subconscious mind, in its attempts to protect him, decided that it would be more prudent to be awake at night time than asleep. And because it runs on instinct, it runs on survival. So it'd be more prudent to be awake. And he was like, okay, yeah, I get that. And when we explain why the subconscious mind does things, and then I said to him, possibly what's happened is it just got used to it and forgot to turn it off. And so Astrid, if you were cooking something in your kitchen on a Saturday morning, over here we do a fried breakfast. I don't know if you do that.
Not necessarily, no.
So, and let's just say you went upstairs to your room, you were doing something, you forgot, the smoke alarm goes off in the kitchen. So you run downstairs, you open up the doors and windows, you clear out the smoke, you take out the grill pan, you put it outside, you fan down with the tea towel on the smoke detector, and the alarm stops. The smoke clears out of the kitchen, the alarm stops.
Yeah.
If that alarm was going off 20 years later, but there's no smoke in the kitchen, well, we got to question the wiring of the alarm, don't we?
Yeah.
We would say, okay, there's something wrong with that. And I always like to use metaphor to explain to our clients, because it simplifies things for them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So rather than getting into technicality, now they get it. And now we're going to talk about, we're just going to do a little bit of rewiring. And we all have different kind of, different ways and nice ways when we learn hypnosis of kind of talking about rewiring the mind. So we're saying the pattern that they're running, that's still nearly like the alarm. It's the same thing with anxiety being the body's alarm system. So when we get into the ICANN protocol, one of the steps that we take is ask the unconscious mind to release and let go of that pattern, the pattern that underlies the habit. So what I like to do then is we get agreement from the unconscious mind. We can use ideomotor signals if we like. We can even get things like this, Astrid, we get, and the head nods and that. So we get all that unconscious agreement.
Yeah.
And we get and we explain to the subconscious mind why it's right to let it go. So the pattern can be historical. It's got nothing to do with today. It's irrelevant. It's not serving any purpose that's beneficial. It may have initially started for some positive intention, but it's not serving that intent. It's not meeting it. Therefore, it makes all sense to let it go. And so then I ask them to go deep inside, deep into the unconscious, right to the roots of the pattern. You can do this for any single issue that a client will come to you for. A phobia, an addiction, anxiety, yeah, smoking, emotional eating, um, fear of public speaking, anything that they might come to you for, there's a pattern that underlies it.
Mm.
So we're looking for that pattern. When we can identify the pattern, and that's what I'm looking for when someone comes into me. I'm like, okay, what's the pattern? What's the pattern? And I'll explain to them that I'll ask them questions. I might ask you the same question in two different ways because I'm looking to see what's happening at a subconscious level of your mind. I'll say to them, I don't really care too much about the presenting habit as much as what's underlying it. I mean, obviously, I'll only say I don't care about that when there's rapport already built up. We obviously have to respect our client at all times. So there's the underlying pattern, and we ask the unconscious mind. We say, go in and go inside and clear out all of the links and associations and everything to do with that pattern.
Hmm.
And we use words like delete. And what I will typically do is I'll lift an arm up and I'll just put it into a cataleptic space or place. And I will say to them that that arm out there, you hear the dissociation language, that and out there, will lower itself only at the same rate and speed that your unconscious goes in deep and removes that pattern. So the person's arm will be out there, and sometimes it takes 3 minutes, and sometimes it takes 15 minutes, and it will lower and lower and lower. And we encourage the process the whole way along. And we suggest to them that when the arm has dropped, first of all, when it's dropping, that you're now breaking the links and associations to that pattern. And that's happening at a deeper level.
Right. Is this all one session, or is it your protocol? Is that several sessions long?
The way I treat cocaine addiction, I normally do 3 sessions with a client.
Hmm.
Um, I would do something like probably parts and the ICANN protocol in session 1.
Hmm.
I might do the kind of future pacing out to a future if you continue with the habit versus the future when you're free of the habit. That might be part of session 2. A big part of what I do also is, I think we mentioned it earlier, stepping in and out of the trance state. So
Right.
they're in a trance when that thing goes
Mm.
into their mind. They don't know it, but
Yeah.
when that thought comes into their mind, it makes them do something that they don't want to be doing. They're in a trance.
Right.
And when we can help them to step out of it and observe, look back in, watch yourself there, watch yourself controlled by the next line and the next line and the next line. And we suggest to them that there is a learning and insights and understandings that are available from this perspective. They'll get them. They'll
Hmm.
find learnings and insights and understandings. They don't even have to know consciously what they are. This is a wonderful thing, as you all already know about working with the subconscious mind.
Mm.
And we do need to tell them that. I feel a need to tell them that to help them feel confident in the session. And so I will do that a few times, bring them back into another situation. When is another time you used to take it? Bring them in, and like they're focused on, like it's there, and
Yeah.
I have them like, imagine you're rolling up the straw or the 50 euro note, and you've got the blade out or the card out doing it. I'll put them there where they
Hmm.
have been lots of times, and then bring them out, learn
Hmm.
something new,
Right.
realize something you hadn't seen before, bring them back, let them go back in and bring them out again. So what they're unconsciously learning is to step out of that trance state. You're kind of training them to be able to do that without them knowing that you're training them.
Right. Oh, that's a smart way. But I was wondering earlier, you said you the subconscious is doing something good, is fulfilling a positive intention.
Mhm.
But that reminded me of Alan Carr. Do you know Alan Carr, the stop smoking
Easy
guy?
way to, yeah, quit
Easy way
smoking. Yeah.
to quit smoking. That's the one. I read that, I think, 20 years ago.
Mm.
And I remember the little monster in your head that you have to stop feeding.
hmm
So that's a negative one. You've got a positive one, of course.
hmm
So how would you want to use that with clients, or is it always better to work with a positive metaphor?
Um, so I wouldn't be using, I certainly won't say an always or never because there's a lot of space in between. And mean, I encourage my trainees. I had, as I said that to you, I had 60 people took my course there a few weeks ago on teaching these protocols,
Yeah.
and I always encourage trainees to take things and play with them.
Hmm.
I don't like rigidity around stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll take things and play with them with your clients, and I kind of use the term "play with them." So that's the way I learned. I'd go to a training session, things I'd like, things that I didn't use again, but I take things and play with them. So the monster in the head. Yes, sometimes I use the um metaphor or analogy of a parasite.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Disgusting. But would that
yeah.
work better with people who, isn't it an LP towards and away? Motivation away from something and towards something. So that would be hitting those people who are more away from pain.
Yeah,
Motive.
yeah, absolutely. And the parasite, when you think about it, like what is it? It feeds off of us, it lives
Yeah.
off of us, it takes from us, it doesn't give anything back.
So do you have
And
clients when you use that, do clients like, oh God, no, I don't want that. Away you go.
yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
do. In fact, well, I didn't use the word parasite, I used the word worm in one of my TikTok
Oh,
videos.
right.
And
Sorry.
and within a couple of days it had gone viral to over 50,000 views.
Wow.
And I was trying to forensically understand why some videos have gone viral and some haven't. And the only thing I could figure out was in the first couple of words, I used the word worm. That
Oh,
may have done something. I said it's like a worm that just buries its way in, like the
oh,
thought of having it.
yeah. Oh God. I mean, everybody wants to watch that. It's like, oh no, the disgusting stuff on on TikTok and
Yeah.
Facebook. Right. So, so you run 3 sessions. The ICANN protocol then is session one, and then the rest is even more. So your training isn't just the ICANN protocol, but a whole load of stuff.
So yeah, the training has we have about six or seven different protocols and how to use them. So we do the parts, we do a place beyond addiction. So we bring them to a place that's simply a place that's beyond.
Mhm.
And we have them kind of pass through an idea, pass through a space into a place beyond. And I always think in hypnotherapy, the word beyond is very powerful.
Yeah.
It's a really and it enables us to create a space for people that otherwise they weren't able to create a trance space. So we'd have that like a place beyond. We have the parts. There's a few wonderful stories that I use around. So after we do parts, we talk about um there was an energy that was put into that habit
Hmm.
that now gets to be redeployed. And I have
Yeah.
a little story around like I match it to people at times, but like kind of like a HR department saying like, okay, we need to redeploy this employee. So the employee that was responsible for the cocaine, um, it was actually a loyal employee.
Hmm.
It was only doing what it thought it was meant to do.
Hmm. Yeah.
So its intention was positive. So we don't have to fire the employee. We can redeploy it into a
Mhm.
much better, much nicer place. So there's a lot of I love metaphor and hypnosis, and I
Yeah.
love storytelling. And typically, when I've finished a certain protocol like parts or the ICANN, and I might say one, two, three, eyes open, I'll just go straight into the story, and you'll see your client there. So they're kind of wondering. So you're already confusing them. You don't set up the story, you just go straight into it. So there's
Yeah.
already that confusion, and we can just trust their unconscious mind to know exactly what to do with it.
Right. Wonderful. Guys, if there are any questions, do put them in the chat and we'll ask them. Is there anything else that you haven't said yet that you would like to say? I can't remember what I've asked already, to be
Yeah.
very honest with you. You've told us so much.
So I think yeah, a lot of we've covered a lot of what I wanted to
Yeah.
say. Um, Yeah, I was going to say a little bit around patterns, like
Mhm.
pattern of behavior, whether that's an addiction or whether it's a pattern of something like anxiety. So I'm sure lots of you people here on this course, hypnotherapists, or on tonight, um, if you've not worked with people with cocaine addiction, maybe you've worked with people with anxiety. Um, and so so I talked about identifying subconscious patterns and then helping your client to understand them. So typically I'll do this. If for example, something like anxiety, no, it works for addictions as well, of course. I will say, there's a glass, I can pick it up and put it down. There's a phone, I can pick it up and put it down. Anxiety is not a thing. It's not a noun. It's not a thing that I can pick up or put down. In NLP, we say you can't put it in a wheelbarrow, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a verb, it's an action. You don't have anxiety, you do anxiety.
Hmm.
And so if you had it and it was an outside force acting upon you, you would be a victim. So there's nothing you could really do. But once your client understands that they do it, now they're empowered immediately. Once they accept that they do it. Now, of course, we have to have a rapport with them before we deliver this to them. We have to have a nice way of delivering it to them. And generally, I'll say, so then the next thought in your mind might be, oh, well, if it's something I'm doing, how can I not do that?
Yeah.
And so I explained to them that any state, so a state of anxiety, for example, happiness, sadness, anything, yeah, a trance state of addiction, any of these things, it needs three things to be maintained. Um, there's your thoughts. So if I'm feeling anxious, what I've been thinking about for the last few minutes or the last few hours or even the last few days, what's been
Hmm.
on my mind consistently? So there's the thoughts, the inner voice. What's that narrative that's there all the time? Perhaps the what ifs and the worries.
Hmm.
And then our body. What's my body doing? Am I carrying tension up on my shoulders? Am I walking kind of weakly with my head down? What's my body doing? So when your client understands, when we share this with them, I normally do a triangle. I write it on a page, a triangle, and I say to people it's like the fire triangle. So most people, either in school or in health and safety training at work, we've learned the fire triangle. We need fuel, oxygen, and heat. Take one of those things away, we can't have a fire. It's the
Right.
same thing here. We take one of these things away, we can't maintain that state. So the thoughts, the inner voice, and the body. What's the body doing? When we share that with our clients, now we're giving them awareness. Now, normally I'll share this with them in a pre-talk, and then I'll work on it in trance.
Hmm.
But at least they now know that it's something that they're doing. So if they have a moment of awareness, they can, if they're feeling a certain emotion, to have a moment of awareness, they can go, okay, what's my body like right now? Quickest thing to change is our body, right?
Mm.
Posture, stand up, do something, a stretch or something. That can break us out of that feeling. Thoughts might try and drag us back in. And, hypnotherapy, we use great work. We can do great stuff to change thoughts and also the inner voice. And I like to I like to give them some I am statements
Hmm.
around so to help them train the inner voice.
Right. Okay.
Mm.
So you do give your clients homework as well, but that's not for anxiety, not for cocaine, or does it come together sometimes?
Yeah, it can do. Again, I'm always just looking like what's the pattern behind it. Pretty much every session I do here, Astrid, is I use I'm looking for what's the underlying pattern, and I use this ICANN Transformational Protocol for pretty
Hmm.
much everything that someone comes into me for. I had a gentleman in a few days ago. He's become a client of mine. He runs a hedge fund. He manages hundreds of millions of dollars of investments on a daily basis, and he's got the very same problem as everybody else.
Yeah.
And like ultimately, the I feel no matter what people come into us for, the core thing, the biggest fear that the human beings have is a fear that I'm not enough.
Hmm.
And that fear that he's not enough, it drove him to be a high achiever. And you'll notice that in high achievers. It drove him. But
Yeah.
it didn't make him happy. So he's managing hundreds of millions, but it doesn't make him happy at all.
Mm.
Um, so there's very much commonalities between whoever comes into us. When we look at that subconscious level, what are the kind of fears that drive us? What are the underlying patterns?
Yeah.
So anything that people come to me for, it's probably 99.9% of things people come to me for, I use that ICANN protocol.
Right. Okay. We have a question here. How much do you deal with in one session? Do you let the subconscious decide when it had enough, or do you decide as you go along?
I'm not sure I understand the question
Oh,
before
okay.
I
So
try to answer.
how much of the issue do you deal with in one session? Because there's different styles. I believe there's
So,
like some trainers or schools that say only one issue per session, and
mhm.
others who say, well, we'll deal with multiple things or do content free and just keep going
Okay.
and just shut up and let the subconscious deal with it.
So if the question is about like would I mix something like a cocaine addiction and then smoking? No, I wouldn't. I
Oh
deal
no.
with one issue at a time.
Yeah.
Um and I'll say to the client that this issue itself here is important enough to be given time by itself. We don't want to dilute it with other
Mhm.
things. If the question is how many of the techniques and protocols I use with cocaine addiction in one session, um I normally my first session I'm doing parts and the ICANN transformation protocol. Um, a lot of it kind of comes down to the tempo of the session, and if the person is a quick speaker, I might speak quicker. If they're a slower speaker, I might speak slower. Um, I give myself like the 3 sessions to cover everything. Like the real answer is whatever you realize you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know, understand the protocols, and then whatever you're comfortable with is what's going to be best for your client.
Mm. So if you say you time it to whatever however fast they speak,
Mhm.
you have a certain amount of minutes for a session. Is it 60 minutes or?
The first time I see someone, I see them for 2 hours.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I will spend pretty much that first hour doing pre-talk and coaching.
Right.
And what I'm doing is I'm priming the mind for change.
Hmm.
I'm letting them understand that change is easy. Um, I'm letting them understand that the change is eminently possible.
Yeah.
And that I might say easier than you might have imagined,
Yeah.
or far easier than you might have imagined, just to, building that expectation. So, and what I feel is I could go straight into the hypnotic session because I kind of know what I'm going to do anyways. There'll be a few things that need to be tweaked, but I kind of know what I'm going to do anyways.
Hmm.
But I feel that if I can explain things like that triangle and why you have that state and what things to look out for, I feel if I can explain things like the underlying patterns, I feel if I can explain things like the positive intention behind an unwanted behavior, that when the person is then in trance, we've already primed them to have a more expansive trance experience.
Hmm. Right. And then your follow-up sessions are not 2 hours, they're like
1 hour is
1 hour.
yeah. So
Hmm.
normally I'll see a follow-up session is a week later.
Hmm.
Typically, assuming things are going well, then I will say the third session will be 2 or 3 weeks later. And
Right.
the reason behind that is I want to let life happen to them.
Yeah.
I want them to be in more situations and experiences where they'll be challenged.
Right. So that's a reinforcement or mopping up of any issues that still come up.
Yes, it's a reinforcement, and I'm actually introducing a few other ways of going at it too.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and that's generally the third session. I'm generally looking at, okay, you've done well. We reinforce that. We future pace out into the future, and like when I future pace, um, I think a really nice way of doing it, and I forget exactly where I learned it. I love the thought of giving someone like the first thing is having your first full week free
Hmm.
because that's achievable, right? Isn't it? So before we say forever and things like that, talk about your first thought. How are you going to feel? Or I said there's words I love. I love beyond. I also love I wonder. So I'm just wondering how you're going to feel when you've done that first full week free. Because what does that do? It indirectly gets them to begin to wonder how they're
Mm.
going to feel, but it presupposes that the
Yeah.
first one full week free has happened.
When, yeah.
Hmm. And,
Right.
and and
Mhm.
and then I wonder what it would be like to have the first full month free and move it out from there.
That's some good future pacing. Yeah. So how do you make sure that you don't overpromise the expectations of clients? How important is the expectation of your clients?
Hmm. Um, to me, it's vitally important,
Hmm.
and I'm not afraid to overpromise. I think it's part of the process. I think now I will always say to a client, I don't have a magic wand. Hypnosis isn't something I do to you. It's something I do with you.
Hmm.
Because and I'm sure everyone here listening has had experiences they've helped someone like with smoking, for example, and the person says, you didn't make me quit.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
and there's that abdication of responsibility from people that they're like they think that it's our job to make them quit and that they've got nothing to do with it. So it's a good question, Astrid, in terms of like the overpromising. We do need to set those understandings that we don't have a magic wand. Change can only come from within.
Mhm.
I can't make that change for them. I'll say to my clients, my smoker clients, I'll say to them, I can't quit for you. I quit smoking myself 20 years ago. Today is your day to quit.
Hmm.
And I can help you. And I can help you the way I've helped thousands of smokers to quit. And I can help you with an amazing process. So I'll give them all of that. And I think it's very important to um, to give that suggestion that this is going to happen. Now, quite interestingly, I worked with a young man that was addicted to marijuana. And
Hmm.
he really couldn't go more than 2 hours of the day and sometimes right into the night without smoking a joint. And he was like that for many years. And so I said to him, I said, I suspect, I said, we'll do one session. And I think I set him the expectation that we would clear it in one session. So we did the session and he went home and he stopped smoking, but then he noticed he decided to have one at nighttime.
Hmm.
So rather than that being a failure, and in fact, he's about 23, 24, and he showed quite a bit of maturity because he could have decided it was a failure. That means I'm going back to one every 2 hours, but he
Yeah.
didn't.
Hmm.
He decided it was a great improvement, and he rang me up and he said, "You know what? I'm doing brilliant. I'm just down to one joint every night. Can I come back in and we get it fixed?" And
Yeah.
we came back in and we got it fixed. Now, this is just speaking back to what we promised them. Um, Sometimes a client for smoking, like I do say one session, that's what we're going to do.
Hmm.
I don't want them coming back for another session because if I don't charge them to come back for a second session. I
Right.
charge them for the one time. So I want it done and have them done in that one. Um so so I tell them one session and that's the way I work. But it can happen that someone needs reinforcement
Hmm.
or that when they leave, they do have a cigarette in the coming days. It doesn't mean that the what we've done has been a failure. And it is important. There's a fine line there between explaining to them that if you have a cigarette, it doesn't mean you're back to square one, not at all. Because what do smokers typically do? They have one cigarette and they go, "Oh, well, that's it, I'm smoking again."
Yeah. Yeah.
They give up on themselves straight away. Just from one cigarette, they give up on themselves. So we want them to know that one cigarette doesn't mean they've failed, but we also want to set that expectation that they're not going to have a cigarette. So there's a little bit of a
Yeah.
fine line there that,
Yeah. How do you do that? Do you say like, yeah, okay, you're done now. You're a non-smoker, but if you do smoke, doesn't matter. And then they might just be empowered to, have another cigarette because you're
yeah, and
so
that is, I'll tell you the way I do it. How I do it is, so I'll congratulate them after the session. If you can see good feelings in them, I give them a high five.
Mhm.
Um, Turan Mirza.
Yeah, he was on
Um,
on our show as well. Yeah.
Well, so one of the real fabulous things that Turan taught me when he's doing his like street hypnosis and things like that, to really solidify the experience for the person, give them a high five.
Right.
And I think that's fantastic. So when someone is kind of buzzing and we finish the session, congratulate them, do a high five because it solidifies it for them.
Hmm.
Now, I typically ask the question, do you feel like you have achieved something?
Hmm.
So it's vague enough, and they'll go, yeah. Normally they'll say there's two things I might say. Normally they'll say, yeah, I do. And then I would say, what makes you feel that? Not what makes you think it, what makes you feel it. So
Hmm.
they're going into the feeling part again. And they'll go in and they'll search and they'll give you answers. That's them solidifying the experience.
Yeah.
The other thing that they might say is, I'm not really sure. I don't know yet. And I say, you know what? That's really normal because in order for any change to happen, we got to go from one certainty into another certainty, and we got to pass through a space of confusion. So you're
Mm.
in a good space. So, so,
There's the coach
um,
coming in, is that?
yeah, yeah. And I will say to them then, um, this is the way I frame it. I'll say, I'm saying this to you now, Astrid, because I say it to everyone.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure you're not going to need it, but if you feel the need for a reinforcement at any point, give me a call, let me know, and we'll do it.
Right.
So I'm telling them because I tell everyone. That's the
Right.
frame.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much, Cormac, for telling us about this. If anybody has questions, you can still put them in the chat. But we're now going to go to our shameless plug of the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference. So, Cormac, you're
Mm.
speaking there as well. You are going to introduce the entire ICANN protocol. And are you going to demo it there, actually? Or
I am going to demo it, yeah.
ooh, looking
Yeah.
forward to that.
So there have been probably less than 100 people worldwide trained on it so far.
Right.
So it's I've evolved it in my clinic over many, many years, and I was advised by my coach to codify it so I could train other people in it. So that's what
Right.
I've done. And then put a name on it so we can market it. So that's what I've done. So I'm going to demo that at
Okay,
the conference.
let's put the conference out a bit. So
Mhm.
go ahead, mark it. Do you have a training at the moment that's online, or do you do only live trainings? Like I don't know,
Yes,
a recorded training? Yeah.
I do. So I have the only one that's ready right at the moment. I do have a diploma one that's online that's not ready just yet.
Hmm.
I have the 2 day cocaine addiction training that we ran only a couple of weeks ago. So that is online. That's available for purchase at £447. I
Okay, so that would
can
be 540, 50,
it's a
550-ish euros, I think. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
around about that, and I can actually share a link if anyone is
Oh yeah.
interested.
Just put it in the
Um,
chat. I'll put it into the replay, whoever's watching in the replay, obviously.
okay,
But
so
yeah,
probably a lot of people here. You said a lot of people here are in the UK,
yeah.
so I'm guessing a lot of them will have
Some American.
um
Yeah.
will know Sheila Granger, and so I ran the training and I ran it through, like Sheila did a lot of promoting of it.
Hmm.
So I'm going to send you that very same link
Okay.
that so I've put the link there. That will bring you to the sales page. You can actually watch a webinar that I've
Hmm.
done there if you like, and it will bring you to the sales page. If anyone is interested in purchasing the that 2 day training.
Right. So
We
that's a
have
2-day training without a diploma, I understood. And you're not ready with the other course. When's that coming out?
so probably within a month.
Okay, so just in time for the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference.
Yes,
Just
yeah.
let's get
That's
back there.
that's the
God,
timing, yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm working my course for tinnitus as well, so it's all very tight, isn't it, with timing and
Yeah.
Finding time to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're running a busy clinic and you're trying to pivot a few different areas, yeah, you still have your clients to look after, and when I leave this job, I have to go home to another job with three small children.
Oh God. Oh, terrible. Oh no. I've got two kids myself. I would know what you mean. Right. So this is going to be the ICANN protocol is going to be in full at the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference and including a demo. We don't have a demo today for time reasons. And yeah, the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference is taking place in Dublin on the 5th and 6th of April. I think I've said it 20 times now. And finally, I've got the date right, I think, this time. Messed up a few times. Anyway, so tickets are on sale at the moment. I'll put the link into the comment, into the notes, into the group, wherever it's going on YouTube as well. So you'll find it in the description. And if you put in the code Astrid at the end, you will get 10% off. And the ticket is 330 euros. 300, of course, if you get it with the 10% off. 297 euros. Sorry, that's about 220 pounds, including the dinner on the Saturday evening with entertainment by Jason Callan. And it was really good food last year, so that's included. And 2 lunches are included on the Saturday and Sunday, and all the coffee and tea you can drink. So it really, really cuts down on your cost to keep yourself alive and
a night in Dublin, of course, for
and a night
everybody,
in Dublin, yeah.
which is
So
an
the night in
experience.
Dublin
Gary
is
was there
not,
last year. He can
yeah.
attest to it, right?
I think Gary might be doing a lot of partying, but
No.
okay, alcohol is not included as far as I know, but yeah, we don't want anybody going off on the wrong tracks. We want you to be there at the presentations.
And despite what you might have heard of Dublin, it's not mandatory either.
No, apparently not. No, there's Guinness. You don't have to drink Guinness. I found that out last year. I'm really glad because I'm not really a fan. Anyway, besides the partying, the eating, and the drinking, there's also going to be presentations. There's 30 plus speakers. That includes Cormac and myself. If you look in the playlist on YouTube or in the group, then you will find a lot of replays of speakers who've been there, who've introduced themselves with either their subject in a short form or with something else that they also offer. And that way you get a good feel for the conference and can make a decision. And it's just going to be amazing, an amazing 3 days for networking. And, I didn't know Cormac last year, so met him while drinking beer, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the way you get into, you up your business, basically. So
since the conference last year, and I think for me, a big part of it is networking. And since the conference last year, I've met many, many new friends who I do call friends, and 2 new business partners.
There you go. Look at that. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sheila was there as well last year, wasn't she? And Gary, he's very well known.
Yeah.
So I met Gary last year on a sightseeing tour in Dublin. So anyway, the reminiscing, it was a great conference last year. And it will be an even better conference this year. So just come along. And again, if you want to do Cormac's training, either the short one or the one that's upcoming, I'll get the details on the big training, I suppose. And then we can always put it in the group and in the YouTube clip as well. So thank you all for coming. And thanks, Cormac, for sharing all your wisdom.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Now I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you. And see you next week. Bye-bye.